Hello everybody, all very welcome. For those who don't know me, I'm the person who's running this gallery, and I'm actually one of the curators on the project. So I just want to say a few words about each of the artists' curators. I know that Mike wants to introduce himself, so I'll let him do that. Maybe I'll just say a few words still about Mike. Mike was my assistant for a few months here in the gallery and has been following the project from the start, really, so he did a brilliant job during his stay here at the gallery, so thanks for everything. It's the opportunity for me to say thank you tonight. I'll say a few words about each artist. Ben Readman. Ben's recent solo exhibitions include venues such as DLR Lexicon, Tuchian Art Centre in Bangkok, the Goethe Institute in Dublin, and Red. In 2010, Ben won Le Prix Mourlot for contemporary painting in Marseille, France, and has been awarded funding by the Arts Council of Ireland and Culture Ireland. Ben's work is held in many public and private collections. Ben is the co-founder and formerly chairman, artistic, creative and marketing director of Lochainn. He's currently lecturing at DIT Grange-Gorman and is a full member of the Visual Arts Centre Limited. Next we have Susanne Wawra, who is a German visual artist based in Dublin. Upon graduating in fine art painting at NCAD, she was awarded the Talbot Gallery and Studio's Most Promising Graduate Award 2016. Susanne has also received a high commended in the visual arts from the Global Undergraduate Awards and has been listed as one of the 4 artists of 50 people to watch in 2017 in the Irish Times. And recent shows have included venues in Germany, USA, Italy, Spain and Ireland, of course. Clair Halpin is a visual artist and curator, and I have the pleasure of representing her. We had a show last year, Global Response, here at the gallery. Other recent solo exhibitions include venues such as Talbot Gallery, Drogheda Art Centre, Cannon County Museum, and Red. Claire has also exhibited widely in group exhibitions in Ireland and internationally. Most recently, the annual RHA exhibition, Dublin, Sculpture in Context, Dublin again, and the Modern Sligo. Exhibitions abroad include countries such as Georgia, Bulgaria, and the UK. Last but not least, Eoin Lochainn, who graduated from NCAD in Dublin in 2000. In 2008, he won the Golden Fleece Award, and in 2010 was shortlisted for the Daily Portrait Award and won the ESB Keating McLaughlin Medal at the RHA annual exhibition. Eoin has had a lot of solo exhibitions, more than 10 in fact, and has participated in selected and invited exhibitions including RHA, RUA and Asia. Various other group shows in Ireland, England, France, Belgium, Georgia and China, and his work is in many public and private collections, and I also have the pleasure of representing Eoin.
Welcome everyone, thank you all for coming. My name is Michael Coyne. I'm a current master's student at DIT in Grange-Gorman. I'm doing a thesis on exhibitions about refugees, migration politics and representation politics. One of my case studies is this current exhibition concerning the other, and I've been very kindly asked to come and chair this meeting. So I'm going to be asking questions to both the curators and the artists, and at the end we're going to have a bit of time where people will have a chance to ask questions. So will I just jump straight into it? Okay, so in terms of the genesis for the curatorial project concerning the other, why have the themes of uncertainty, conflict, mounting racism and intolerance been selected? Anybody? No?
No. Well, when you think back to when we started, it was kind of in the middle of last year, and there was a lot of trouble going on in the world, I suppose. Mainly, maybe, over in America, Trump was kind of building up a head of steam. And, it upset a lot of people. It began to polarize a lot of people. And that's when we were thinking, what can we do to counteract that kind of polarization? So that's where it started. So by getting a lot of people to work together, we thought, well, it's the opposite of polarisation. We'll try something like this.
Sure. Oh, very good. Olivier, do you want to?
Yes, I remember we discussed the actual terms: intolerance, racism. I remember intolerance was one I was keen on adding. I was thinking of the LGBT, which we wanted to make sure that as much as possible the terminology was going to cover, I suppose, various minorities. So I remember the discussion that we had. I can't remember the title concerning the other. I think we discussed different titles, did we not?
I think it possibly can. I would give Eoin full
Yes,
credit
I
actually
think
on the
that's-
title. I'm not going to
yes, I
accept
think
any
so.
credit,
The
surprisingly
idea
enough.
of being concerned.
I suppose we had the process before we had the title. Myself and Eoin had previously worked on a similar project. I know you're probably going to get to that. So it was really with that, like it was Eoin had approached me at I think it was January last year. I think it was part of your New Year's resolution. Yeah. I think it was like 2nd of January or something. You've got an idea. Do you want in at this early stage?
Either that or start smoking again.
But that's what I kind of thought. It was one or the other. So we had the concept of how we were going to work came first, and then it was, I suppose, a way of phrasing it. So I think it was that idea of actually to nearly kind of to manifest that idea of we were going to be working with other artists' work physically, interacting with it. How could you, I suppose, conceptually or thematically push that? And did it very eloquently, I'd say.
Following on from that then, how would the artists become involved in the project?
As in, how did we...
Like, how were the artists selected? I mean, or
we did a list. We checked it twice. We met. We kind of started making it kind of over a couple of weeks.
Wish list, I suppose, and then
with a wish list, and then we got down to ourselves. No, we're absolutely honoured that you are. No, we did, actually. No, the thing about it was, I think, I suppose to be brutally honest about it, we had our wish list, and two of that initial list couldn't commit for reasons wanted to, but other work commitments. And the other, actually, interestingly, wouldn't commit on the basis of that they actually didn't agree with the project, which was actually an interesting one.
They give the reasons for it.
Shall remain? Yes, they actually did. Yes, in a very long email.
Okay.
So we then decided that we actually didn't necessarily particularly want that person involved. So it was kind of but it actually was an interesting thing. It started kind of broaching the questions of, well, I suppose this project wasn't going to be for everyone.
Okay.
So so we had to consider that. So in selecting and I suppose, well, I would have known Susanne's work from I share a studio. We were inside the studio. And I would have known Ben's work over the years, and the others we would have known all their work. So I suppose even though we didn't initially set it out that it would be male and female equally, it actually just happened that it was. And we had our international artist, obviously, was Susanne. As Susanne ticked the boxes on emerging and international, so she was a definite.
We did discuss as well the idea of having somebody from Northern Ireland. I think that was part of the discussions. We thought it was possibly important. And then from then on as well, maybe Miriam McConnon, who is one of my artists but based in Cyprus, we felt could be interesting as well in view of the political situation in Cyprus. But it was very organic the way we did it, and then we had the list, and it was just a matter of contacting people and
I suppose, and as I said, like you had to outline it to artists that this is what we were going to do, and how they would respond to it.
What were the initial challenges for both the curators and artists faced at the outset of the process for developing the exhibition? Like, what were the main difficulties that you might have faced initially?
Do you want to start with the artists, maybe?
Well, yeah, sure.
Maybe just to bring them in.
Well, for me, like when I got the email, I thought it's very, very different from how it normally works. I work in very old techniques, 15th century techniques, and I make my own gesso out of rabbit skin glue, and I make my own paint out of pigment and so on. So a project paintings will take a long time to make, and you can wait and work on layer after layer. So for me, the thought of doing this was kind of daunting in some way, but kind of the challenge of it was quite interesting. And working on top of other people's work. I had actually done that once before in a residency in Slovenia, where we were paired off. And there was 12 people from all over Europe, and you were given a partner and you worked with them for 2 weeks. And that was very much like you were just put into a pair and you could work in any way you wanted. But most people just worked the painting up to a certain level of finish, and then the other person jumped on top of it. And so I did a few paintings each and switched them. My partner was Bina Skirt, this Slovenian artist, and he was very much like kind of a street art, not a street artist, but a muralist who painted huge scale things. So it was a very different kind of process. So I was kind of used to that in some way, and I knew it was kind of interesting project. So for me, even though I was coming from my studio practice is so different than this, I can use something in the process would be
adaptive.
Yeah, and I really like the subject matter as well, so it made sense in the current climate, as Eoin was saying there earlier on.
The current crisis with the migrants.
Yeah.
It's very relevant for today.
Yeah, I mean, my own work is not political at all.
Okay.
So it's just also to make something that's very on topic was just a different thing for me too.
I get you. Yeah. Susanne?
I was happy being asked, and I really liked the concept of the work, and that you're kind of responding to other people, and also kind of letting go of your ego or a certain preciousness of, I've made this, don't move this an inch. So, and also working digitally, I'd work a lot with photographs. So, it was just a really interesting project, and the organization was really good in terms that you had 1 week for working with one image. It was just really surprising.
Did you find that put you under pressure having only the 1 week?
No.
No, you really
no. But I'm a person that kind of leaves it to the end of the deadline to get that push. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Clair and Eoin, what were your initial reactions with regard to having to do reworkings?
I suppose having been part of a similar project before with Eoin, I kind of knew what to expect, and I suppose the difference this time was the actual physical managing of the algorithm that was getting everyone's work to everyone.
Sure.
I had done that the last time, and that had ended up being, I had this, like, my kitchen table was like this war room, as I was kind of going, this would be simple, you just go send it on to them and then to them, and it's like, oh no, then people go away and all of that, and I didn't have the benefit the last time of not seeing the work as it went around, if you know what I mean.
I get you.
This time I tried not to look at the work as it was coming.
Right.
It certainly relieved a lot of the, not anxiety, but the pressures of getting everything kind of, the machinations of the project, not having to manage that side of it. Olivier did that. So I felt that I was really excited by the prospects of it, and the freshness of being able to just literally that kind of thing of Monday morning going, or Sunday night, what's this week?
Sure.
So time was obviously a pressure, and some images, and I know we'll probably get into this later on in the conversation, some images, and I know I would have met Ben and Brian about 2 weeks into the project, and both of them were like, the images are really full, and this was only week 2, so there was, I suppose, and myself and Eoin and Olivier would have, that the images got very dense very quickly with this process, because it was 10, the last time we'd had 8.
Yes.
So I think that was challenging.
Sure.
Because there was that thing that the images, with 3 or 4 people, so there was that thing, well, the images nearly had to get emptied out again to get redone. So.
Sure.
And did that not happen in the previous project?
Not really. There was, but actually, what did happen on the other one, which was interesting, was with the other one, when we, said to people, we said, now your image may not survive to the end, and kind of your intervention may be overworked by somebody else, and so there may not be a trace of your own work in the end one. But actually, with the last process, mine was actually one of the first images to go completely, and I was none too happy about this. And rang out, and I was like, yeah, it's all right for everyone else's work, but not mine.
That's my next question.
Yeah.
How do artists find having their own works altered or at times even destroyed?
Well, yeah. Well, don't know if maybe finish on the other question. I'll come back to that. We'll have a think about that. Yeah. I'll work out the answer for that.
So, how did the artists find the process of having their own works altered or at times even destroyed?
I found the whole thing very interesting.
Good.
I didn't mind afterwards if it was destroyed. What I really liked was something arrives in your desk on a Monday morning, you haven't a clue what it's going to be.
Sure.
You can kind of read the story so far, see what other people have done, and then you can do what you like with it.
Very good.
I mean, some of them were, like some artists might have just touched at the edges a little bit, but I always thought,
mix it up.
I know where they're coming from. What's my contribution? So,
you had a proportion worked out, though, hadn't you?
Well, I was saying to you could use
it's the own in the system. I only discovered this in about week 8. That own in the system.
I thought it's fair enough to use a third of the image. Leave 2/3
based on.
Why not? It's like if everybody, like you don't have to leave all the marks there all the way through, because you know what they're trying to do, and you can continue and kind of reinforce that idea. But you don't have to just add another little bit in the corner. You can reinforce that idea by adding a big block in the middle, if you want. Sure. So in my case, I nearly always kind of took it by the scruff of the neck and did a decent change to it. But then afterwards, somebody else could take it and scribble that right out. It didn't make any difference, because each stage was a new piece of art. So as far as I'm concerned, I did my piece of art, not worried about what anybody else is going to do with it. They did a new piece of art.
Susanne, Ben? If you had problems with your work being
I would have preferred if someone had completely obliterated what I'd done in the previous image, and it wouldn't have bothered me in the slightest if they had actually. And you would kind of hope that brings something of the feeling, or maybe the text even, or maybe just something in the image might have sparked something else. And then rather than have images completely busy, And also, maybe I feel differently if it was like physical painting that you're doing. You spent a month on it or something. But a digital print, I had absolutely no worries with anyone doing it.
Sure.
I mean, it's not even a print. That's it's just like it's X's and O's.
Ones and zeros,
yeah. So. No, it wouldn't bother me at all. Actually, in the other project that I did in Slovenia, that did happen, and there was real tension over it, where one of the artists completely painted it white over the paintings that someone had spent an entire week doing. But actually, they improved them. Not that the paintings were terrible, but they kind of did quite a subtle thing, and they weren't fully opaque, and you could see a trace of the history of the mark behind it. And just the braveness of doing that actually produced something much more aesthetically pleasing and just an overall stronger piece. And I think, probably at the start, some people were a little bit nervous about, I don't want to take that away and so on. And then people settled into it a little bit more and played around a bit more. I think that's the feeling of that project.
But the thing is, as well, for this project, we all knew that your rework of the original image was going to be there forever, because we did say from the outset that we would print some of the in-between or intermediary images, and the fact that every week we were publishing online each image, so they had their own sort of existence no matter what happened to them. They still existed as the last sort of latest rework, so maybe there was this idea, yes, they might not be using the next image, but at least whatever you did existed forever, and we can see that here. So maybe there was a bit of reassurance in that as well. Don't know. If that played.
Yeah, I suppose it is an interesting because it is, and like Ben is saying, because like the artworks are, well, as you said, they're just like virtual as such. Like it's they're online. So that whole thing of, well, are they actual artworks because they're not physical?
There's no losing them. It's not like there's one original.
Which is, this thing, which would be obviously very different to the project you worked on, where it's actually the physical painting. And I'd agree with you, if it was a painting been worked over, I think I'd be more, whoa. But the other thing, and I suppose it's going to come up actually, is that with the idea of kind of building momentum around the project, a decision was made, which I, to be honest, and I've discussed this with Eoin and Olivier, I wasn't totally happy with the idea of the work's being put up every week. Because I kind of felt that you could actually then see, kind of go, oh, right, that's what that person did. Oh, now I see where they're... And it was a personal thing, because I kind of felt actually it took away some of the freshness maybe that you could kind of... You were kind of going, I don't know how all of that got there, but now it's there. And it then led to a situation or an incident in the process very early on. I will full expose on this. Susanna's initial image, this one, I think it was there an earlier version of this. This one here, the first one on the left, you can see the web in it. Yeah. So the initial image was actually Susanna's. It was an image of a painting. Am I right, Susanne?
Yeah.
Of your granny.
Yeah.
Done on blouse material, on fabric. And that image was sent to one artist, and then by the time it got to the second artist, this second artist completely obliterated it using Photoshop. So it ended up being this kind of tessellated, so the image was actually gone. And as far as I was concerned, I was like, well, that's that. Granny's gone, so sorry about that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, that was quite radical at that early stage of a work for the image to be completely obliterated. And I thought it would be interesting to see what happens next. Then Eoin, I think, put a web over it, and next moment the granny reappeared, and I was
No, she reappeared.
Sorry, she reappeared. Yes, sorry, Granny reappeared. Granny was reborn by stage 3, and I was like, whoa, how did Granny get back in there? So I got on to Olivia. I said, what's there? And it turned out it was Joanna. I think she had reused the image, but not only had she taken it off the Facebook page, I think she had contacted to get the higher resolution image. And I was like, that's just totally against the rules. And like, Eoin and Olivia were like, whose rules? And it was like, under our rules. Like, and then Eoin proceeded to then at another stage ask for an image. And I was like, Eoin's now breaking the rules. Like, so this is just like anarchy.
The difference is, it wasn't over a painting. There wasn't a painting there. It was a virtual project. Sure. You can do this. You can go and...
Granny's still there somewhere.
Find Granny. And I agreed with the third person, Joanna. I think she put the Granny back. I thought, it's terrible that she's gone so soon.
We were losing more sleep over than Susanne was. We should have brought her here this evening.
Because it lost all its meaning by just putting a filter over it.
Yeah, but
so I
think... I remember Clair came to my studio because we were back in the same studios in Talbot Studios, and she was like, "Oh my God, did you see what happened?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I didn't mind because I do some collaborative work just in writing, and there you're totally used to editing, to the whole kill your darlings. Thing, so to cross out whatever you like, So I was totally open to the pixelated, pinks. That
I think it's an interesting thing as well. I think something Olivier mentioned there, whether, and I know myself and Eoin discussed this at another stage as well, as to whether each stage, whether the artist saw that that's a finished piece. At that stage, I would be happy for that to be finished, or whether they just whether artists said, well, actually I'm doing this, but I know other people are going to work on it, So
Actually, I work towards a finished piece each time.
Yes.
So did I, yeah.
I really thought, because I just wanted to send something that I was kind of like happy enough with.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and then sometimes if I felt like it was a very busy image, I did keep most of the elements maybe. Sometimes I cropped them and moved them around and so on. So there was kind of a trace, probably sometimes a very slight trace of previous images. But then I tried to work it so that tonally it kind of worked as an image for me.
Yeah.
And more so with tone, so toning things down and, you know, trying to, so like the image of that one at an early stage, I think it's here on the table maybe somewhere. James' one, is it?
Oh, you mean the Pokemon?
It's behind there.
Yeah,
behind
there.
there. Yeah, that one, this Pokemon one.
That's your rework on the,
Yeah, so say this one here, that's printed out, but it arrived to me and it was like, there was a coloured hand here, this was a different colour, and I just I just have to make them all sit right, to be able to kind of take some sort of ownership of a final image. But then that probably, I was kind of aware then a bit later on that I thought, because then you receive something that looks kind of finished, and it's actually more difficult probably to work from than getting something that's a bit more open maybe.
And I think that there was someone, certainly that one there, the large one, when that came to me, it was like, it literally came to me as like the 4 layers, and I was like, this isn't, it needed a physical intervention that actually gave it some kind of definition, because it just looked like a collage, you know, and it looked like 4 artists have worked over this, you know, so. And even I think I remember Olivier.
For me, it was interesting because I was the one person receiving each image, and there were series where I felt it's happening.
Yeah.
Image 3, we have a work of art, we have something, and I was then getting worried that what are they going to do next? But in some cases, actually, that one's like nothing is happening. Image 1, image 2, image 3. It's to me, it was still not happening. People were just adding or removing, but I was like, I'm not sure where we're going with this, you know. And it came to a stage, you remember, where I panicked. Do you remember the...
It was one of your panics. No, actually, I'll talk about the other panic.
It was interesting to see the moment, which for me, I mean, that was just an opinion, you know, that image was there, that was it. And I wish nobody else was going to touch it, you know, but obviously you had to let go, you know. So that was very interesting at that stage, you know, to get each image and to see... But yes, some series I felt took longer to happen for me.
To find it, definitely,
it was exciting every Sunday getting all those images. And,
I think, this one here with the Rembrandt, that was another one actually which Kate had completely emptied out the image. It had been this one here. Sorry, it's see the one with the boat on the island. It was like about 3 stages after that, and then Kate stripped it right back, so it was just like this showing the dots image, and Olivier was like, ooh, this is like stage 7, and we're actually on stage 7, and he was like, oh my god, what are we, and I said, there's 3 other artists left, it'll be fine, and Miriam put in the jigsaw pieces, and Olivier was like, and I was like, we've 2 artists left, Olivia, will you have it? And I said, there's one of them is Ben and one of them is James, we'll be fine. And then James just put in the tiny little signature, the Rembrandt signature. So this is stage 9, so Olivia was standing on like cold sweat at this stage. I was, and I don't, well, Ben was oblivious to all of this like anxiety going on, so.
It was this, you know, from this one to that, and a bit of a shock, you know, and then it's like, only one artist left, Ben, you know. So.
Came up trumps, Ben.
And
then, you know.
Final image is actually fantastic.
And this has become one of my favorite images of the whole exhibition. So, Clair kept saying to me, trust the process, or if you trust
the artist. Trust the artist, that was the thing. And actually, was another interesting thing actually with this one as well, because the initial image for this was James Hanley drawn. And as most of you would know, James Hanley is he's not director of the RHE, he's a member of the Royal Hibernian Academy. And his drawing of a horse had started the initial process, and there was a few interventions, which it's the same one that Ben was talking about there. and the horse was there, and there was kind of different things happening kind of around it, and it was like kind of everyone was maybe, I don't know whether it was, but that people were reluctant to maybe kind of intervene with James's precious drawing, and so it seemed to me like it was everyone's kind of colouring around the edges or whatever, and then there was Han came in, and then Lochlainn came in, and then Ben came in, and not only just, it was like he'd knocked the Academy off its pedestal, like to me. So it was both conceptually and aesthetically, and by putting this Pokemon character, which was actually political in itself, which is interesting as well. So that was that. So it was like knocking, the Academy.
And patching out later.
Yeah, and then Eoin went to put it back in. So scared cat. Sorry.
So, with regard to the final images which would be displayed as part of the exhibition, how did the public respond to the final reworked images, which represented the collective efforts of the 10 artists involved? Olivier, you want to start there?
For me, it was interesting because, by the way, we decided to have all final images on this side of the gallery, but there's 9 of them, and the 10th is there, so that part of the gallery. As we just said, we felt that some images were very dense, very busy, so my concern was that, people were sort of wondering what different layers, but people don't come to the gallery, they know nothing about the project, they just look at the image for what they are, and not everybody is interested in deconstructing an image, so that was quite interesting, and like this image, for instance, has become one of people's favourite images, and it's quite dense, but people don't look at that way. They don't know all the layers that have come before that, So the response of the public was really interesting. What we found here, myself and my staff, is that we found that we had to explain a bit every time somebody was coming in, and to explain about the final images, the in-between, but that created a lot of interest. The day before yesterday, I had a group of older people, I think it's called Active 55, and they came here as a group, and they wanted me to give them a talk about the exhibition, and the interest was amazing. And the day before that, I had a group of teenagers from Belvedere College, and the teacher asked them all, what is your favourite image? And that was from the start of the discussion, and they all went for different types of images. And then they listened to what I had to say about the in-between prints and the different stories, and then the teacher asked the same question again, what is your favourite image? And most of them changed their minds. So to me it was very interesting, because of the stories. Either the personal stories, they were reading the text in the book, or what I was saying to them about the incidents, and that was really, really interesting, and this idea of keeping an open mind as well, about things, what is that you like, that you don't like, and that was really interesting. So the response from the public has been quite positive, I think,
Very good, very good. I'd like to talk about some of the reworkings with the artists. So basically, Clair, you're reworking from the Eoin McConnon series. Do you want to pass that around to people?
Yeah. So I'll have 2 minutes. That's this one, Clair.
Yeah, so just let the people have a look so they have an idea of what we're talking about here. So, do you want me to read out?
No, I was going to say, actually, I'm trying to remember how it came to me. Have you the one?
Because I have a statement there, your statement.
Oh yeah.
Have a look at the statement, and then I'll ask you about. Because pretty much your statement.
I'm trying. So just I suppose to have a look at how it came to me.
Sure.
This is going back to
it's stage 6. I suppose what I had written there was that this image was very dense starting off. Actually, this was the initial image, and I actually was watching this on Facebook, been sent around, and I was like, oh God, like when that one comes to me, because it was very, very loaded, both with imagery and imagery. There was a lot going on. It was very busy.
So it would have benefited from somebody coming along with just one tour and say, okay, I cover it.
And that's the thing, I was hoping that somebody would have before it got to me. So.
You started it, so you couldn't.
Well, this is the thing, and I did say it only started off with a very busy image, which was interesting because he actually didn't leave a huge amount of space starting off, and as Olivia said, this one took a while to kind of settle, even kind of thematically. So basically what I wrote, my statement in relation to how I responded was, this artwork as it came to me was dense with imagery, symbolism and themes. Visually, it was heaven and hellish. Sweeping clouds, fallen angels, imploring hands. Also the idea of monuments to fallen heroes and the changing plinth of good and evil. I used a section from one of my own paintings, Jig Map Iraq, depicting the American forces toppling the statue of Saddam Hussein from his plinth and covering the head in the American flag. The media coverage showed hundreds of Iraqi hands waving American flags in support of the gesture, creating once again another iconic propaganda image of the US triumphing over evil. I suppose in using my work generally would be political, so I did struggle with this one, and I think like my process in reworking any of the images was literally to print it out the first week or the first day of the week and to look at it, and invariably my initial response would be what I would come back to kind of later in the week, but I really did struggle with this one because I think I had thought of putting in, I had a second thing that I thought of putting in. So actually, and actually taking a section from one of my other paintings, because my work generally tends to be very layered with images taken from different places. So it just seems like a fit. And I actually liked as well the fact that as it came on, and this is another thing as part of the process, the timing of it is actually quite critical in that, like the 10 weeks in which it happened, which was started from the first week in May.
Second week, yeah.
And for me, certainly, what my interventions reflected what was going on in the news as well. Like that, it would kind of filter through. So I'm not going off on a point.
I had a specifically worded question, and you pretty much you're hitting every point that I had. So just keep going there.
So because the whole thing about the toppling of the statues, that was all kind of kicking off in the States, and then as well as that, just to bring in and sort of back to that piece over there, the week that I got that piece, the Grenfell Towers had happened. And for me, it was that thing of where here was another series of faces that you were looking at going, meant to feel sympathy with these people, but you're kind of going, are they the ones in the flood? Or are they the ones in the towers? Or are they the ones? And it is this our inability to how we process images, and this I linked it back to that idea of concern and the other of like how can we respond to victims who we don't know? And when there's one disaster after the next. So I suppose that was kind of that's kind of gone off point there, but so sorry about that.
No, my question was going to be on the power of the image. You know what I mean? Basically, so the reworking notes the power of the image, the ideological power of the visual, in particular for the promotion of propaganda. As an artist, what are your views on the power of the image when applied to addressing political upheavals, and what that power means when representing, say, marginalised groups such as the plight of refugees? But I mean, you really have covered the power of the image.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, and even in relation to another one, which is that piece there, the one with the boat with the island. And this is like with any images that I use, even in my own paintings, like they're indexical. They refer to a particular. I'm very like within my research. It's not like that's not just any old island. Do you know what I mean? And it's not one from my head. It's specifically the island that Alan Kurdi, the Kurdish refugee, was heading towards.
Right.
Do you know? So whether anyone knows that, it's written in the text. But it is that thing of that I pick very specific. So it is that thing of the power of the image. Everyone remembers that child. Everyone remembers that child being that image of that child.
Yes.
It became the image of, to sum up, the millions of refugees.
Yeah,
and so I don't know.
When you think about the power of the image, when you think about the toppling up of statues or whatever, we have a few in this project, and I find myself having to explain to American tourists that then you did that on June the 30th. So well before Charlottesville events, But obviously an image like this is going to be re-empowered by more recent events as well. So that's a very interesting thing. We had a lot of people coming to the exhibition thinking that part of the exhibition was responding to what happened in Charlottesville, and it actually predates Charlottesville, But obviously the images here are reinforced or re-energized by more recent events as well. So that to me was kind of interesting as well. That the reading you have of a work of art is obviously in context of what's happening right now, and doesn't necessarily bear
a direct connection with what happened before, what the intention of the artist was. So that's an interesting thing as well.
How that document there? I was going to have this question about one of Ben's reworkings. Ben, you want to give a slight rundown of where you were going with that reworking?
It's the same one.
It is that image that Olivia was just talking about.
Oh yeah. So yeah, we kind of talked about that already. But when I received that, there was obviously we kind of started off as a wartime memorial. It looked like a classic wartime memorial. Then with the addition of planes and so on, and parachutists, it became even more obvious. And then there was an additional kind of image there of soldiers on the bottom of the statue. So I was kind of wondering what to do with it. This hand coming in. Brian had just brought his son's hand in as if he was about to grab the statue. So as Olivier mentioned, is before Charleville toppling of the statue, the riots there. But I brought in Pokemon as kind of a satirical figure, I suppose, and it was I just working on some of the premise of this exhibition, concerning the other kind of injustices that happen around the world and kind of unfairness, I suppose. And so I added a bit of text there about that. It just so happened that the month before this project, there was a Russian YouTuber called Lochlainn who had filmed himself playing Pokemon Go in a church. And he was given a 3.5-year suspended sentence for inciting religious hatred. And he had actually been detained since October 2016. So he'd been incarcerated for over a year and a half. And he had actually, when he got arrested for doing that, it was the same month that the Norwegian Prime Minister had been caught playing Pokemon Go in Parliament. And obviously she had no sentence imposed on her. But just the kind of the comparison there, unfairness really, was quite relevant. And then so that was, and then I gave some history of Pokemon Go and how it really become this huge thing in society. People were talking about that more than they were talking about any other current affairs that were going on at the time, and it became this massive distraction. Everyone was playing it. In Dublin, people, workers, like adults, everyone was playing this massive game that had it had some facts there, but within 3 weeks, over 100 million people had downloaded the game on their smartphones, and 231 million people had done it just in 1 month. Has been playing this game just 1 month of July. And at one stage there were photos of Syrian children holding pictures of Pokemon, kind of saying, "Here I am. Can you find me?" As a kind of response to this inaction by the rest of the world, their plight. So it was kind of a statement on that, really. But of course, images are hugely powerful, as you said, from the young boy on the beach and so on, and they remain in people's psyche,
And I think, I suppose what's interesting about it is like that it was an image of one child, as opposed to you kind of going, surely showing pictures of millions of refugees you would think that would have more effect. But actually, it's ironic that it's a showing of one or like you're saying, a showing of Syrian children with pictures of Pokemons. That's what gets into me, as opposed to just the sheer volumes of. Do you know? So I just think I just kind of think that there.
Yeah, it's funny how certain images stick in the media. There's certain algorithms that they have to hit to make it a kind of a hit record, if you know what I mean. And it's kind of sad in a way.
Of course, yeah. Do you want to pass on the one for Eoin? And Eoin, don't read out your statement. Pretty much. Give me a chance to actually ask these questions. Just basically, asking you to repeat back, which it's on this one, so everybody can have a look, basically. So the reworking is from Ben's introduction of the Pokemon character toppling the statue, originally introduced by James Hanley. Your image highlights the problematic of regime change, which is often advocated by Western powers as a way of dealing with foreign governments which they declare to be hostile. you chose to reinstate the toppled statue.
He's scared of James. I tell you, he's scared of James Hanley. Come here.
What did you try to represent and convey aesthetically?
I should get you to be my copywriter. I was very interested to see the Pokemon figure, Ben's Pokemon figure. Right. That's like, that phrase, bread and the circus. Like the Romans used to say, as long as the plebs have enough bread to eat, and they have the circus to distract them, they won't think about politics, So like the Pokemon figure is like that. There was more people paying attention to the Pokemon Go thing than there was to the Syrian refugee crisis. So that was good that was put in, But again, okay, now it's my go. So I didn't get rid of anything. I just moved them over, and I rebuilt the statue. But you can see it's battered because it's not a proper statue anymore. It's just a stuck together thing, right? It's like a cardboard cutout. Mm-hmm. Sure. So it's all very there's very metaphorical here, isn't it? I reconstructed the statue because I was saying you can't just knock down the statue and everything's going to be grand. You have to kind of figure out what are we going to do to make the world a better place, type of thing. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, we weren't talking about Charlotte, oftentimes the old institutions are kind of knocked down, and there's nothing better to replace them with. So really, what we had to do was to sort of try and imagine a better world for, a more equal society.
Sure.
Okay, and then it's a new composition. The next thing I did was I printed out the image, and I made a paper plane. They're up there, and I added that into the composition. But I spent a fair bit of time, recomposing the image. That's like what Bren was talking about. You have to kind of work at an image to, until you're happy with it. So the reason I made them into those airplanes was I was kind of saying, I was imagining the statue as sort of a master of industry.
Sure.
The guys who are making all the money, the capitalist lords. And what they're doing these days is it's the arms race, it's the arms trade. They're making millions and millions on the arms trade while, all over the place people are killing each other.
Sure.
So that's what I said. What do we do? I can't read without my glasses. We sell military equipment to both sides. Yeah. That's what we do. That's what we do in the West. We're not trying to save the world. We're making money out of other people's misfortunes. Mm-hmm. So that's about the description of why I did that.
Very good, very good.
Do I think images are powerful? I think definitely they are. I don't think we would be here kind of working on them if we didn't think that it would just have an effect.
Getting into the latter stages of this now before we go to the questions and answers, but a critique has been debated in relation to the politics of representation, highlighting and addressing the problematic of Western artists developing works based on the struggles of groups such as migrants and refugees, essentially representing the plight of others and yet not sharing the experience of these groups. What are your perspectives on these issues? Any of the artists?
I don't think you have to be an insider to make a statement about some person's suffering. If you have the audience, or if you kind of, everybody does their research and then find a way to deal with that in their practice. So I don't think you necessarily have to be an insider. You don't have to be, a migrant. but on the other hand, of course I can understand it, because you're sitting there comfortably and making a statement.
Sure. Without necessarily actually having lived
Yes.
that
Yes.
statement.
Yes.
I agree with you entirely, because we're actually here in Dublin making art. Well, some of us are in other places, but I mean, mostly we're here making art here for an exhibition here. It's our life we're presenting, and we're hoping to change the world around us. You know what I mean? I don't know what we can do about Syria, but I think we can kind of try and make people aware of terrible things that are going on. I think we should try and promote some kind of message. I think that the whole project was about trying to promote a kind of diversity and equality and
absolutely.
I don't know the words, but I think that's what we were doing. I don't think we were.
I know what you mean. There was a genuine will behind it. It wasn't like it was like we're doing this to benefit ourselves. This is a message that needs to be represented.
I think because I agree with what both Susanne and Eoin said, because because then you kind of go, well, then so you can only paint about who you are, if you know, because you're kind of going, I know I can't.
You can only box. You have to box yourself in.
Well, that's the thing, because I can't go off on a raft and see what it's like to be a migrant. Of course I could, if I chose to be a performance artist or something, but you know what I mean? Because you can't only just paint about as a painter. It's how it affects you, so it's your response to it. And as Eoin is saying, the way I would see it, and this is my own kind of thing, that as an artist, it's my job or duty to shine a light on these.
Very good.
Do you know what I mean? That's what I do. That's what I'm compelled to do. Do you know? Mm-hmm. So I don't think you can. I don't know. Is it a bit facile to kind of go, oh, isn't that terrible over there, but I'm grand over here? I don't think it is.
I mean, I think it's reflected in the title of the exhibition, Concerning the Other. It's looking at the other, Edward Said with looking at the other and kind of bringing empathy and understanding and tolerance to meeting people from other backgrounds and cultures, and also in the collaborative kind of aspect of the project itself, you're concerning the other, because you have that logbook of what has been done to the image that's been sent to you, and you see the narrative and motivation for what the other artists have done, and you're seeing what kind of it prompts you to do, and where you're taking the narrative. Yeah.
There's so much debate about that in cultural appropriation in the art world, particularly after Whitney exhibition and so on. But it would be a bit like saying no journalist can write about a crisis in another country, for example. So things just wouldn't be heard about and just be lost in the lost. There's that kind of debate rages on. When people take a cynical take on it and they're really out for profit, then it's a very different thing. But this clearly isn't that type of project.
I get you. Olivia?
Yeah, that's something that you and me have discussed a lot, and likewise, if we had decided to onboard, somebody, say, from, I don't know, the traveling community, or we could have been accused of possibly exploiting that as well, So at the end of the day, we knew what we were doing was showing consent for the other, and it happens to be you guys doing that, so it's not a problem in itself. But the discussion that you and me had as well was the fact that not a lot of people who are in the suffering at the moment, they don't have a voice, and we're talking about a generation that possibly
will move to Ireland at some stage, and it's their children that will bear witness to what the parents have experienced. You can be critical of that in the sense that you'd like these voices to be heard now artistically. So it's a debate, yes. And at the moment, there's a lot. I read a very interesting article the other day about Hollywood and all those films. At the moment, I think there was it the Help that was very popular. It's always white people being the saviors, always white people, and there's an issue with that. Definitely, you know. You'd love the others to really do it themselves, you know. But there's a different. It would have been a very different exhibition. This is what we've done, basically. So. Like we don't have to make any apologies for it, but yeah, it's an interesting debate. Yes, definitely.
The thing is, well, it's kind of like how we kind of tell ourselves, or how the media tell us the stories of what's going on in Syria, or what's going on in Afghanistan, what's going on in North Korea. It's like we're happy to have the story told to us the way, and kind of not have to go too far into it, because it is that thing. Well, they're Syrians, and sure they're over there. They don't really. Kind of come on our radar, other than the way the story's been told to us. And I suppose just to maybe link back to, I suppose, even a specific example in Dave, is that alright? Say kind of my reworking of that last piece here, the third one in here, and it is this idea of the. It was based on there was an optician in Lampedusa, which is a small island in the Mediterranean. And this optician, he said the Syrian refugees were something that kind of appeared on the horizon and appeared on the beaches, and he was like they were a hindrance. And he couldn't, he was like, really, it's kind of not doing, it's not great for the old tourism. But it was only when he was out on a boat with his friends, and he heard some noises in the middle of the night, and he went out, he thought they were birds because he could see these black dots on the horizon. And then as he kind of got closer to them, he realised they were actually refugees in the water, and they were drowning in the water. He was on a small yacht that only held 8, and he took in, I think, I have it in the text there, I think he took in something in the region of like 40 refugees. And by the time he got back to the port or to the harbour, he was hailed as this hero because he had done this. And he said, no, I'm not a hero, because for every one of those that I didn't save, it's not good enough that this is happening. So the reason I'm kind of is using that as an example is like, is it only when you have a personal interaction that it makes sense? But I think that we can't go out and save the refugees, but we can just become aware of what is actually going on. And that's kind of back to what I'm saying, that that's our job as artists. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I might give questions over to the audience at this stage. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask the artists or curators about the process, about any of the final images per se?
Yeah, I have a question about the process. Did you feel extra pressure when you were doing the last phase? Like your last, you were number 10 in the series. Did you feel extra pressure with that or not? Or was it just another layer, another week, and you were so exhausted by that stage?
Let the office.
I did.
Yeah, I
like
think
for
there was.
Me,
Yeah,
I kind of felt a responsibility to take into account what has happened in the whole narrative and the journey of the piece, and how to tie it together, but also make it my own.
That's your piece.
Yeah. So I mean, it was kind of lots of changes I made to that piece. Yeah, because with some it really depended on the piece that you got, and what it triggered or what you felt it needed. And some of them, you'd make subtle changes. But with the last one, I felt that, yeah.
Yeah, well, I was kind of, where each time, as I was saying before, I kind of worked towards a finished kind of piece, so it wasn't a huge difference for me, maybe. You do have it in the back of your mind that this is the final piece, but Olivier had already said that he was going to print out some of the earlier reworkings, so it didn't take so much, didn't make it so much pressure.
But did that influence the order and where you got the pieces? Decided the order.
Everyone got everyone started on an initial image, and then as I said, Olivier has the algorithm.
It was interesting actually. It was actually quite difficult. We had to. This was my table over the summer months, and this is actually they all have artist names, and this is the first piece, and we went all that, So we made sure that different artists were reworking each other's work, So in some cases it might have been the same artist twice, or but it was actually fun to actually find the right order and then implement it and everything. So I keep that religiously now because it's not Blue meant I had sent the image on the Sunday. V meant I'd received it, and the red V's that they were late. Once, and somebody went on holidays at some stage as well. So but it went very well because everybody was so committed. It was amazing, And I was saying to somebody today, I don't know if the artist felt that way, but I certainly felt that way. The last Sunday, I was like, so all my Sundays are free now, And I was actually so used to the project, I always missed it, the way, because every Sunday was a routine, receiving all the images and then sending them on, And I'm sure for you guys it was the same, So I felt a bit empty when that stopped, I mean, there were some of the other aspects for the exhibition to prepare, but that instead the creative phase of the project that you were involved in, me, I was just a project management thing, I missed it. I did miss it because
I think I remember when we were here and you went checking for after the project finished. You went checking. You were like, "Oh, my new images are in." It's not there. It was like, "Oh, it's all over."
It was weird. It was weird. They went very well, actually. I think
It was, I mean, everyone was, and that was the thing in the initial thing when you were asking about the selection of the artists. It was a 10-week commitment, which is quite incredible to get. And you're asking artists to work in a completely different way. To the way, and I know even at the opening, that was another thing. Sorry, you just mentioned all of the artists didn't know each other. Either.
Okay. Yeah.
And you wouldn't have met each other. No. Would you have met? Oh no, you didn't.
No,
So we just didn't. So it was actually only the day of the opening that most of the artists actually even met each other. And there was a few interesting conversations, a few apologies, and kind of the granny issue, granny gate.
I think for me it was good that I didn't know the majority of the artists, so I didn't have any apprehension in feeling like, I'm just gonna, work on your image. Yeah.
Very good. Any further questions? Yes?
It's not quite a question, but I was just interested in Ben's comment that you were so afraid of working in collaboration because this was being done digitally as opposed to being done physically. And I was just sitting here wondering about this whole, just the digital medium and how, as artists you feel about permanence and what's temporary or ephemeral. And the thing is, I suppose that the digital medium is not ephemeral because the websites are being stored. But on the other hand, it is in a way, I'm just wondering, how as artists you feel about that permanence and what passes and what's going to. Like for example, you're working with Renaissance methods. These paintings have lasted 400, 500 years as physical artifacts, but this won't. Will it last? What does it mean?
Yeah, I mean, it is in my mind when I make paintings, is this kind of permanence, and I kind of read a lot of books about that. And I don't use acrylic for that. That's one of the reasons I don't use it. But I'm very much into the kind of craft of painting and things that have been historically verified and work. I kind of like the idea of making something and knowing that if someone cares for it, it's going to last essentially forever. But it's probably an egotistical thing, maybe. But also, it's just that craft technique, and but in this case, they are I didn't feel as much worry about reworking the images. You could print them out. I did print out a few of them, and then Clair did as well. Where they weren't completely digital in that they arrived in a digital form and they went back out in a digital form. But we do have, I cut up one of them and things like that, and worked over some of them in paint, and I scanned in drawings in case of the Pokemon one and added it. So there are some kind of leftover physical remnants of the exhibition as well. But yeah, the digital thing probably just takes away some of the worry for me, I'd say. I mean, any sort of edition as well would be, I had a little bit of that feeling about as well. If you sell photographs or screen prints and so on, even if they're handmade, a painting, for me, like a physical painting, there's only ever going to be one exactly like that. And it's hard to get away from that, really. It's even sometimes traumatic to sell a painting. And there's several paintings that I wish I'd never had. Whereas if it's a digital print, I'll never feel that way. You actually get like physically attached to something you've spent a month making.
Miriam McConnon can't be here, and she was telling me she is unable to use Photoshop, so every interaction or every response by Miriam was actually a physical one. So every time she would have printed the image she received, and she would have interacted with it. If you look at that, she painted that life jacket on the printout. The puzzle, when she put the pieces of the puzzle, again she would have printed the on-the-dot drawing and physically put the puzzles on the printout. So for her, everything was done in a very physical way. There's no digital art project for her. The only thing digital was the transmission or the sending of the images. But her work was actually physical every time.
And I suppose relation to that and what Ben is saying, as a painter, like every painting I do refers to the history of painting and the history of art. Like you as your own as an artist, it has to do that. But as regards whether kind of this is the painting, that's painted, that's not. So that's painted over that image. So what does that mean? Which is the artwork? Is it that's that? That's a print of that. But then there's the virtual image as well. So I don't know which one of those is the artwork. Is this one because that actually has an original Clair Halpin painting on it? So I just kind of think it does bring up that thing of the digital virtual. I don't think you did say it, yeah. And as Ben said, like it came to us digitally and it left us digitally, and then I'm sure we all have some traces of them.
I mean, a lot of people would argue the opposite. If you're a professional photographer and you only work with a digital camera, then I'm sure people get very attached to those paintings or those photographs in another way, But that's just a personal viewpoint from my own perspective as a painter.
Yeah, I thought of it as a virtual project. Really, it was an idea that was going around from person to person. I wasn't really thinking of the final products that were going to be produced and shown in the gallery. It was actually, what was interesting for me was how each image changed each time, That's what was interesting. And once it had come to me, I had done what I had sent it on, I wasn't really interested anymore.
Sure.
I mean,
as you were saying, each one was a final image for you, as far as you're concerned. You were creating a final piece each time. It wasn't. You were never thinking of it as an intermediate.
We could have just not printed it or anything.
Yeah.
Still, all the artists would have done all the work. We could have not ever had an exhibition. We could have had it just on the internet.
But it's if there's there is 100 artworks, but are they still artworks if we don't print them out? It's like bare woods, that kind of
They are.
Yeah.
It's like a chicken and the egg kind of.
More bare woods is what I was thinking. If they're there, and if a bear shits in the woods, then does anyone know? That's what I'm thinking. So if they're there as an artwork, if they're not a physical thing, are they an artwork?
At what point does it start to exist?
Yeah, that's not quite what I was thinking of. There's a question of time and what lasts and what endures. Because in a funny sort of a way, the virtual work is probably more enduring and more of it can endure. Like for say, one of those brilliant works from the Renaissance, there might have been 100, 200 that were also done and that we don't know about. Whereas at this point, all of these stages are going to be there. But as you say, are they there or are they not there? Because we still, I think, have that slight little issue with the cyber reality, you know, that it's almost, it feels like not quite right, but fantasy.
But it's debatable, you know, there's a current debate about the surviving of digital works of art. Somebody have worked in another incarnation in the world of IT, and experts in the .cloud. You had experts telling photographers, for God's sake, print your best works. We just don't know what's going to happen with the virtual world. And you're talking about experts in the .cloud world. So the idea, we don't know for sure that digital artworks will have such a long life either. So
formats can change.
We don't know.
Well, digital storage is a real problem. It's a global problem in so many regards. That's why blockchain has become so popular. One of the reasons as well, because it's encrypted and so on. But I would agree with Olivier. And printing them, you know, these are archival inks, I suppose, on rag paper. They'll last hundreds of years as well, you know. So they will be, they'll be permanent works, and probably I guess that they'll probably last longer than all of the works that aren't printed.
Interesting thing, actually. Yeah, it really does that we have made them archival, what are virtual. We've totally.
We might all save those in between works, and Olivier might, but in 100 years, who's going to find them? You know, whereas these physical things might be in a frame on someone's wall, and then they'll actually be there.
Any further questions from anybody about the process? The final images or the deliverable workings? No? Do the artists or curators have any final statements they'd like to make in relation to the project overall?
Well, I know there's some funders here. We didn't discuss this at all, but this project was actually funded. In the very early stages of the project, we raised money basically using a crowdfunding company, Fund.ie. And we had over 65 sponsors, funders. We really like to thank them again. In fact, we had a draw to organize, so everybody gave us a tenner basically. Their names have been entered, and so we do a draw, and there's a limited edition to be won. But again, thank you to all the funders, because you know that covered the cost of printing, which has been really helpful. And I don't think we've announced that officially, but the exhibition is going to start traveling or touring. So it's going to go to Belfast early next year.
Queen Street Studios.
Then next will be, I think, Anton
in
Dundalk. And last week we heard that the Irish Children's Society, based in City Assembly House, the octagonal room, which is currently being, I was going to say renovated, I don't like the word, conserved, will reopen, I think, in September 2018, and the first art exhibition on Thursday will be this exhibition. So, and I think every time the exhibition will be different. You know, it's what you see here will look different, I think, in other places. So that's kind of exciting to think that this body of work, you know, is going to have different incarnations depending on the space. So we're quite excited about the idea of the show travelling and hopefully getting even more interest.
And I suppose just to mention as well that some of the prints have entered the state collection.
Yes,
the OPW have
prints
pushed
here are entered the OPW collection.
So
Beverage College, when they sent one of their art teachers and their students have decided to do a similar project. So teenagers were very. We asked the teachers, would they mind having their work obliterated? That was very interesting conversations in the garden that day. But they went back to Beverage College next door and they're going to run the project. So it's great that the project has inspired the school to do something similar, and the idea of concerning the other working together. You know. So So thank you.
Thank you.
thank all the curators and the artists for taking the time to be with us this evening. I'd also like to thank them for putting their time and efforts into the exhibition itself. It's been really wonderful, and thanks to all of the people that came out tonight to hear the discussion. We really appreciate it.
And we want to see your thesis, by the way.
Yes,
Yes.
it'll be very long. We look forward to that. I'll send out a copy to everyone in the audience.
Thanks, Mike.